Michael Yon, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
I love coming on your show. You've got one of the greatest shows out there.
Well, Michael, it's great to have you on the show again. And you're actually in Vilnius, or as those of us who speak Polish call it Wilno. And you're looking at this very, very unusual migrant, I think we can call it crisis, across the Lithuanian border from Belarus. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Before we go there, 5 weeks ago, you were at the Darién Gap. And let's talk about the realities there. That situation has actually gotten worse from all the information that we're getting. So very briefly, for those of the audience that might not know, tell us, where is the Darién Gap and what is its significance for the whole migration realities in North America?
Right. I'm heading right back to the Darién Gap. I was there about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Darién Gap is at the Darien Isthmus, the Panama Isthmus, that little sliver of land between Panama and Colombia. There's no roads there for more than 100 kilometers, about 102 or 3 kilometers, so more than 60 miles, right? No roads. And some of the roughest jungle in the world, really sticky mud. It's got special mud and some serious mountains and very dangerous rivers. Flash floods, it's a rainforest. A lot of biological problems with the various diseases out there. A lot of the migrants die from waterborne diseases, and many are just washed away in flash floods. At least 10% are dying going through. And this month, there'll probably be 8,000 or 10,000 go through, which means 800 or 1,000 will probably die this month in the jungle. And almost nobody knows about these. Well, I've been out there. It's true. I took two congressmen out there recently with Chuck Holton. We took Tom Tiffany and Burgess Owens out there, and they actually went to the jungle. Extremely courageous. Went beyond the edge of everything. The only security was us and the Indians that we were with, and went out and dug out canoes, and they saw the carnage of the people coming through the Darién Gap. The Darién Gap is the ultimate wall. If you're super fit, you're like Rambo fit, and the weather smiles on you, you can get through in 4 days if you don't get lost, right? Most people take at least 7 or more. One guy just took 22. That was abnormally long, and he actually survived. But many people just get lost out there because they follow false trails and they just vanish forever. For instance, a family asked me yesterday to help them find some of their family that was lost in 2016. Of course, the chance of that are very slim. Many of the migrants who are coming up through Mexico actually have to start in South America because they can't start in Mexico. They can't get a visa to Mexico. So they start in 3 major countries in South America. They start in either Suriname. That's where many of the Cubans and the Haitians go. They go to Suriname because they don't need a visa. And Suriname is that little tiny country in the north part of South America. It's an old Dutch colony, so Dutch is one of the languages. And so they'll go there. And then from there, they'll take a bus to either Brazil or Ecuador, and they get up to Colombia and cross. Now, so they'll either go to Suriname, Brazil, or Ecuador to begin with, because they can get visas on arrival. So you've got people from all over Africa, people from all over Asia. I met many Nepalese. I spent a year in Nepal, so I can talk with them immediately about what's going on, where they came from. They're not coming from a war. I see people from Bangladesh all the time. I see people from India, Sikhs and Hindus and others. It's more than 80 countries, so it's just a long list, including Afghans. I haven't seen any Afghans personally myself there, but many people from parts all over Africa, Nigeria, Cameroon, Sierra Leone, Congo. It's a who's who down there in the Darién Gap. And again, right now, unprecedented. I'm seeing a report that just came out here. The biggest number of crossings in history was in 2016. That was 25,000. This year, they're looking at 42,000 as of a few days ago. And I think it's actually quite a bit higher because I've been down there watching it. But they're putting the number at 42,000, and this month's going to be the highest month on record. So, yeah, I mean, so those people then feed up through Panama, through Costa Rica. Then they go to Nicaragua. Then they get up to Honduras and finally to Guatemala. Then they cross at a place called Tapachula, Mexico. I was just over at Tapachula, actually, watching the crossings. That's where they cross another river. That's like the Rio Grande of Mexico, between there and Guatemala. They're going over on inner tubes with poles and that sort of things, pallets, those sorts of rafts. And then they'll stay in Tapachula, sometimes for months at a time. And then from there, when they finally get clearance from the Mexican government, then they head north. Then they go up to cross over in Texas, or of course New Mexico, Arizona, or California. And from there, for instance, one Haitian family that we've been tracking since, I would say March of this year, I think early March. And we met them in Nicocli in Colombia. 16-year-old girl, Haitian girl, her 12-year-old brother and their mother had just come up from Chile. They're Haitians though. And they crossed. So we met them in Colombia, got their phone numbers and that sort of thing, kept in contact. They made it through Colombia, they made it through Panama alive, made it to Mexico. We flew up and interviewed them in Mexico in detail actually. And now they've just made it to New Jersey about 5 or 6 days ago. So that would have been early March, maybe March 3rd or 4th, when we met them on the beach at Nicocli, just as they were getting on a boat to go to the Darién Gap. And they've just made it to New Jersey since early March, but they made it. And so as soon as they make it, of course, others are, when they text back, I made it, that just encourages others to come. That's why I keep telling people, for instance, here in Lithuania and other places, the walls are effective, they work, but the bottom line is you have to have people to defend the wall, and then you have to have the political will. You have to have the defense in depth, the wall or some barrier like the Mediterranean Sea, the people guarding the shores or the wherever, and then you have to stop throwing the corn out. If you throw corn, people are coming, period. And if it takes them 6 months to make it or 2 years to make it, the bottom line is, did you make it, right? Even with 10% or more dying in the Darién Gap, as long as those incentives are there to come to the United States, they're going to come. Same thing here in Lithuania. Now the incentive is mostly to get to Germany. I've been interviewing lots of Iraqis and Yazidis, Arab Iraqis, Kurdish Iraqis, Yazidis. Some of them I interview in German. Some of them already speak German. For instance, I interviewed a Yazidi the other day, 23 years old, paid $6,000 to leave Iraq. Well, $6,000 for him, $6,000 for his son. It was about 2. He was holding his son while we were talking, and for his wife. So $18,000 for a simple flight from Baghdad to Minsk, which is only a few hours, and then took a car and walked over the border to Lithuania, and now they're stuck in a camp. He was just texting me about an hour ago. So, but he doesn't speak English, he speaks German because he used to live in Germany, as did many of the other Kurds and Yazidis. And then when Iraq got peaceful for a while, they went back to Iraq, and then ISIS rose up and the Turks started attacking. So now they're leaving. So we get, I call it HOP, human osmotic pressure, right? You got the push and you got the pull, right? If the pull is strong enough, it doesn't matter if there's any push. Most of the people I see in Darién Gap in Panama and Colombia, I would say arguably 99% are there for the pull, right? That's mostly people coming because they're just going to America for jobs. They've got family there already. They're going for a better life. Now here I see a lot of people coming in from push. Clearly the Yazidis have a case for asylum. I mean, many of the people I see in Darién Gap, almost all of them have no case for asylum. Almost every one of them is there for pull. They're just coming for the money. But a lot of the ones here, if we send them back, well, this is the EU. This isn't America. But if the Europeans send the Yazidis back, there's a high chance they will be killed. So, but most of the migrants that I see, that's not the case. It's simply economic.
So let's jump into the Darién Gap side of things first, before we jump into the Europe side. Now, you mentioned an incredibly disturbing number, and I just wanted you to kind of qualify this for me. You said that 10% don't make it, 10% going through the Darién Gap die along the way. Explain this to me. How are you getting these numbers?
My good friend Chuck Holton, a very experienced war correspondent, we've been down there quite a lot together. In fact, we're going to be back in the Darién Gap in about 4 days from now. He puts the number higher. He puts it at 1 in 7, which would be more like 14%. How do we get the number? We don't know. That's a very good question because we don't know how many go in and we don't know how many come out. So how do you get the answer? How do we get that estimate? We've talked with we've interviewed many migrants, just unbelievable numbers.
So I met this Somali woman in Tapachula who came through here about 6 weeks ago. And she said I said, did anybody die? And she said, man, there's dead people everywhere. I saw all kinds of dead bodies. She said people fall off of things, they drown, they get washed away, they die of dysentery, just everything. And she said there were several people who were still alive, but couldn't go any further. They couldn't walk, and so they were just waiting to die out there. One woman was a big, heavy-set woman that couldn't make it up the hill of death, and so she had been out there. She said for 24 days, people kept feeding her, but she couldn't go back and she couldn't go forward. So she said she was just waiting for God to take her.